In this video, we'll look at how to configure and use P4VS, the Perforce plugin for Visual Studio. P4VS is a replacement for P4SCC, an older plugin based on the SCC framework. Installing P4VS is easy. Simply download the free plugin from the Perforce website and double-click it to install P4VS in Visual Studio, or install it from the Visual Studio gallery. You'll need to use Visual Studio 2008 or 2010, plus a Perforce server at version 2008.1 or later. You'll need a Perforce server at version 2011.1 to take advantage of all of the latest features in P4VS, like P4 Sandbox and Streams. Once you have P4VS installed, you'll see it under Visual Studio's Extension Manager. Next, go back to the Tools menu, select Options, and look under the Source Control section. Make sure that P4VS is selected as your source control provider. The rest of the source control options let you configure P4VS. For example, you can select which diff merge and tools to use if you do not want to use Perforce's own P4 merge utility. Another important option defines how P4VS will determine Perforce connection information, such as your Perforce server, username, and workspace. The default option lets you select your Perforce connection information whenever you open a project under source control. You can instead choose to connect using your latest connection, connect using settings specific to a project solution, or have P4VS detect your Perforce settings from your environment. For most users, the rest of the default options will be acceptable. If you want to connect a new project to Perforce, you'll have the option to add the new project to Perforce SCM when you create the project. Just make sure that you're working in a directory located inside a Perforce workspace. If you forget this step, you can always go to the File menu, open a connection to your Perforce server, and add the files later. For this tutorial, I'm going to open up an existing Visual Studio project that someone else created and checked in. I already have the project file synced to my workspace. Since I left the default connection configuration option selected, I'm now prompted for my Perforce connection information. Notice that the project is connected to Perforce, and I see some basic Perforce information in the Solution Explorer. For instance, on the file program.cs, I see a small green dot on the file icon. That means that I have the most recent version of the file in my workspace, and it's not checked out. Now I'm going to set up my working environment by opening a couple of Perforce views, which are available under the View menu. I'll open up the views showing File History, Jobs, and Pending Changes. All of these views are available as floating windows, docked windows, or docked windows shown as tabs. Now let's look at how you can use Perforce to help you work in Visual Studio. I'm going to start working on my source code file, program.cs. So I'll just start typing in the file, adding a new line of console output. When I started typing, P4VS automatically checked the file out for me, which you can see in the Solution Explorer with the small checkmark icon on the file. Let's see how my changes are going. I'm going to right-click on the file in the Solution Explorer, and here's where I can find most of my Perforce operations. For instance, I can diff this file against the revision I started working from. By default, that opens up P4 Merge, Perforce's cross-platform diff and merge utility, and here I can see the new line of code that I entered. The Perforce operations are also available under the File menu from the Perforce submenu. Now I'd like to shelve this change to let someone else review it before check-in. Shelving stores a copy of the file on the server without officially submitting it. So again, I'll right-click on the file in the Solution Explorer and click Shelve. In the change list description, I'll just put in a message indicating that I'd like somebody else to review this. Now in the Pending Change List tab, I see that I have a new pending change that has program.cs checked out and shelved. Now perhaps the reviewer suggests a small change to the modifications I've made. So I'll go back into the source code file and add their suggestion. Now I'm ready to submit this change. First, I need to go back to my list of pending changes, and I need to move this file to a different change list that does not contain shelved files. So I'll right-click on the file and choose Move to another change list, and I'll just move it back to the default change list. Now if I open up the default change list, I'll see program.cs checked out there. I use Perforce jobs as a way to integrate with defect tracking, so I'm going to take a quick look at the jobs assigned to me and link to a job when I submit my change. So in the Jobs tab, I'll just run a quick search for any jobs that are open. I see right now that there's only one job listed. Back in my Pending Changes tab, I'm now going to right-click on the default change list and choose Submit. I'll fill out a new change list description, and because I have my Perforce job view filled out, I'm automatically prompted with a list of jobs that match my search criteria. So here's my single open job, and it's already selected to be linked to my check-in. Notice that I currently have the option selected to keep this file checked out after I submit. That's very useful if I intend to make a lot of changes to this file and submit regularly. Now let's take a look at this file's history in the File History tab. So I'll make sure I select the file in the Solution Explorer, and then I'll expand the view. And here I see all 7 revisions of program.cs, including the one I just created. For each revision of the file, I can see all of the associated information, like the check-in comments and the date at which this revision was made. The time-lapse view gives me an easier way to look at the evolution of this file. So I'll right-click on the file in the Solution Explorer, and under the Views menu, I'll select Time-Lapse View. Note that P4VS launches P4V's Time-Lapse View tool, and you will need P4V, Perforce's cross-platform GUI client, installed in order to use this feature. Using Time-Lapse View, I can step back in time and see how the file has evolved. I can also invoke the revision graph to review branching history. In the revision graph, I can see that I'm currently working on the main stream, and there are 2 other branches created. If I was working in a Perforce stream, there would be a menu option for the stream graph available under the Views section as well. Again, the context menu from the Solution Explorer is where you'll find all the other Perforce operations available through P4VS, like reverting files, locking them, submitting them, and getting an earlier revision of the file. That wraps up our quick overview of working with Perforce in Visual Studio using our new plugin. If you have any technical questions while installing or using P4VS, please contact support@perforce.com.